You don't want to miss this episode. We're going to talk about buy-sell agreements, why every business should have one. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Control and Compound. I'm Darren Mitchell. Joining me as always, Christina Wyatt. Christina, how you doing? We're going through buy-sells today.
Yeah, I'm doing great and I'm excited for this topic. I know listeners are always looking for more topics for business owners, right? We got a lot of listeners that are business owners out there. This is absolutely one you're not going to miss. If you don't have a buy sell, if you've heard that term before, we're going to dig into it today. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, and I think even if you're a family member of someone that has a business, or you'd like to have a business someday, or you're just interested to see how it works, it's pretty fascinating. It can be very devastating if you don't have one and not set up properly, but properly set up, it could literally save a legacy, save a business. So hugely important.
Yeah, we've seen them save businesses and legacies, and we're going to share some stories too, which I think is important.
Real world stories happened at CNC. Yeah, we'll tell the stories.
Yeah. Before we dig in, though, I want to remind everybody that if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, please make sure you subscribe and leave that 5-star review. And if you're listening or watching on YouTube, please make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell button so you always know when new content is coming out. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Control and Compound on Instagram and TikTok.
All right, Christina. So, we're going to talk about why everyone that has a partner of some business partner of some sort should have this. Well, it doesn't matter if you're a doctor or a dentist you're part of a larger practice. If you're a small business owner and you get a minority partner, you get a 50-50 partner, doesn't matter. You need a buy-sell agreement. And let's start, I guess, with what is a buy-sell agreement?
Yeah, I just want to throw one more in there for our listeners, real estate investors. You've got a corporation and you've got a business joint venture type like these come in handy there too. So keep those in mind as well. So what is a buy-sell agreement that we're talking about today? Well, it is a legally binding contract between business partners or shareholders, and it's going to outline what happens when someone, like an owner, so there's a couple different things that could happen. When an owner dies, they're disabled. If they were to become disabled, they retire, they just want out of the business. Like what does that look like? What are the terms of what happens? Because when those large events happen, to have a plan in place is definitely going to change the outcome of it. So this is legally binding. So this is sit down with a lawyer and write out this buy-sell agreement. This is not sitting and having a coffee and chatting it through and not putting it on paper. Sometimes people think that's good enough. I can absolutely tell you that it's not good enough. When these devastating events occur, things change, and having that all documented and lined up on exactly what's going to happen for your spouse, for your family, your kids, like there's lots of things that are up in the air. They've got a lot of things going on. So if you can get this contract put in place beforehand, that's going to be very important. Some of the things that it goes over are, like I said, what's going to happen in one of these events. So we look at death, disabilities, another one, if you can no longer work in the business, bankruptcy, that happens. If you just want to leave the business or if you want to retire, that's another reason. So some people think death is the only reason that you might want a buy-sell agreement, but not true. There's lots of other things that could trigger you wanting to leave the business, and how that happens, how that exit occurs is going to be outlined in this document. Another big piece on it is how they're going to value the shares. So the business valuation, like what are we looking at now for a business valuation? What are we looking at later? And I know we're going to dig into that a bit more. And then the last piece is how are we going to fund it? All of this takes money, right? So it's great to have a plan in place, but if there's no way to actually execute it, that's not great either. So those are the main pieces that are going to be outlined in the buy-sell agreement.
Yeah, great intro. I like some of those things people don't think of, like bankruptcy. Like if you're a small business owner like us, trust me, you have personal guarantees all over the place, especially when you're starting out. And if you're bankrupt and you effectively can't conduct business, like personal bankruptcy can dramatically affect your corporate situation. So what's the plan for that? What's the plan if you lose everything and you need to sell your business? Like huge implications on all those things, death being the most obvious one. But I want to spend a minute on valuation because this is sometimes overlooked, and it is so important. So it's so important. Sometimes companies just start, two buddies get together and start a business, and it's in their garage, and well, all of a sudden it could be worth $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, $10 million. Who knows what it could grow to? So to not have a system in place to value the company could be devastating for the deceased shareholder potentially, and his or her family, and the surviving shareholder. So typically you get a valuation done when you first set up the buy-sell agreement. So what is the business worth today? And the important thing is you guys need to agree on it. The partners need to agree on it. So, oftentimes people will look at EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, and amortization, basically your net profit roughly. And, it could be a 3 times multiple. So, if we're earning 500 grand a year, the business is worth $1.5 million. Well, maybe it's a 5 times multiple in your industry, or maybe you're in a growth phase and it's a 10 times multiple. So that's a significantly different number. And again, it's okay what the number is if you both agree on it. But if, you're thinking, oh, our business is worth 5 times earnings, and then you die and your partner goes to buy your spouse out for 1 times earnings, how are you going to feel about that? Well, you're going to be dead. But I mean, that's the legacy you're leaving. So you've got to get a valuation done. So the way you should do it is you should have a valuator come in and value that business, spend a little bit of money and get the business properly valued, and they'll come in and then they'll give you an actual value. And then you can agree on, okay, we're going to use this value or a valuation expert in the event of death to trigger one of these events. And this is the formula we're going to use. So you've got to get that agreement done up front, especially if you're ever selling to a family member or what's considered a non-arm's length, so maybe just a key employee. CRA is going to tell you what the value is. They might not trust what value you give it unless you have an independent valuation. They're like, oh yeah, you're valuing the business at a lower amount, so there's not as much tax payable. You're going to sell to your daughter or whatever it is. So hugely important to get that valuation.
I was going to say, when you're saying business partners need to agree, but CRA needs to agree as well. Yeah. So you got one more piece there. So you guys can agree on it all you want, but you need to make sure that CRA agrees on it as well. So bringing in an expert, very important.
Yeah. So great exercise to go through just to know what your business is worth. Like a lot of business owners go through this and they're like, holy crap, our business is worth this, or our business is only worth this. But again, you've got to plan not just now, but in the future. It could be 20 years down the road before a triggering event happens. So make sure you have an agreed upon formula that you review consistently every few years.
Yep.
Next, here we want to talk about what are some of the common clauses in buy-sell agreements. So there's all kinds of clauses, and again, you get a lawyer involved in this, and they kind of have a blueprint. But you need to modify it for your circumstances and make sure you're comfortable, because I've seen lots of buy-sells where they're like, no, I want to remove that clause. I want to add this clause. But some of the more common ones would be the shotgun clause. Okay. This isn't when dad says you have to marry the daughter. This shotgun clause says, okay, if you and your partner are in a situation where your partner goes, I'm going to buy you out, here's how much money I'm going to give you. So in other words, when they do that, they're valuing the business. Well, the shotgun clause says the partner that gets the offer to be bought out, that partner can turn around and buy the other partner out at the same agreed valuation. So if you're 50-50 partners and your partner goes, I'm going to buy you out, here's $1 million. And you go, well, that's not fair. Our business is worth $10 million. Tell you what, I'm going to give you $1 million and I'm going to buy you out. So what it does, it reminds me of when my brother and I would like split a piece of something when we were growing up. One person gets to cut it and the other person gets first pick on which half is bigger that they take. Shotgun clause works a lot like that too. You're not going to, if I'm buying you out, Christina, I'm not going to make you a lowball offer, because what's going to happen? Well, you're just going to counter and say, no, I'll buy you out of that lowball offer. So it forces the person that's making the offer to the other partner to have a fair, reasonable purchase price, so the other partner doesn't exercise that shotgun clause. But again, hugely important because, just like in marriages sometimes, partnerships don't always work out long term, and you could be in a situation where you and your partner are just can't work together anymore. Something needs to be done. The business is going to collapse with the two of you fighting. There needs to be a mechanism that you can get out. Another big one is first right of refusal. So if one partner goes, you know what, I've decided to sell my shares to Joe Blow. Well, the other partner can go, no, wait a minute. I get to buy those shares at that price. I get first right of refusal. So that's important. Again, you want this business to continue in the vision that you've seen it, that you see it. You want to make sure that you have first right of refusal to buy those. There's mandatory bio clauses, and that's some of the things you've talked about, the death, the disability, where this happens. Like, let's say you have a partner that develops Alzheimer's. Are you going to want to be partners with someone that can't do daily tasks in the office, can't make intelligent decisions, or can't make the proper decisions at times that need to be made?
Yep.
So what's the clause there? Well, you need to have that written in the buy-sell agreement to say if there's a mental incapacity, we have a clause that there's going to be a deal made that, money for shares. Another big one is tag along, drag along. So this would be, let's say you got a partner owns 70%, and that partner goes, I am going to sell to this terrible person over here, our enemy that you hate, but I don't care. I'm going to get a bunch of money. And it's like, well, the other partner's like, well, wait a minute. I don't want to be partners with this guy. So they have the ability to tag along in that purchase price so the whole company is bought. Or you could have a situation where one partner wants to sell and the other partner doesn't. Well, if it's in the agreement to drag along, it's like, well, no, I'm going to drag you along and you're going to have to sell your shares because this purchase price makes sense and I have more shares, or the majority of shareholders agreed on that. So really important to lay those conditions out. And, I've dealt with so many of these through the years where partners go, well, we don't have to put that one in because we're really good friends. And I'm like, why don't we just put it in anyway, just in case? And again, I hope you continue to be great friends for the rest of your life, but this is a legal binding agreement. Put all the clauses in there that are appropriate. Don't exclude one because it's your buddy.
Yeah. And these types of things will save friendships, really, because if you've got it all outlined, there's no it's black and white what's going to happen with it. And I know with a lot of these clauses, they're more geared towards the selling, right? Like a lot of people think buy, sell, and they think, well, it's for death if something happens. But like, no, those clauses, that shotgun clause, that's if someone wants to sell, right? And you may think that's never going to happen, but relationships change. How many divorces have we heard about? Or
someone's going to get older and all of a sudden someone's going to come with a really big check and they're going to go,
can't say no.
But I mean, the death is a big one. Like, think if you don't have a buy-sell agreement, okay? So, if you're a business owner out there today, think tomorrow if your partner dies and his or her spouse gets those shares. And that spouse knows nothing about the business, nothing about what's going on in the business, doesn't know how to run the business. Well, that's your new partner. That is your new partner. And when you don't have a shotgun clause in place, I'll tell you a real world story now. This happened. It was their client, but before they became a client, this event happened. It was two brothers. They owned a relatively small business together that was growing, and they were 50-50 partners. And one brother was going through a nasty divorce. There was just nasty. Okay. They were separated. They weren't living together. They weren't communicating. They weren't talking. And he died in a car accident at 42. Well, now his will still said that his wife, legal wife, inherits his shares. So now you got the surviving brother partners with what was going to be his soon to be ex-wife or brother's ex-wife. And I met this client 20 years after that event happened. The business grew, and every single year he was cutting a check for $500,000 to that woman who was not involved in the business, who didn't know anything about the business, was about to divorce the brother of the current business owner. And that's what happens with a buy-sell. You know how much it would have cost to fix that with the cheap term insurance that we're going to get to here? I think we figured it out. It was $38 a month. For $38 a month, there could have been a situation that was solved where there was a payout and the surviving brother got 100% of the shares.
Yep.
So $500,000 a year, 20 years out, plus when they go to sell it, she's going to get half. So, I can't stress the importance of, yes, even if you're young, yes, even if you're a small business, yes, even if you're just early on, you need to have a buy sell because time goes by fast and things happen.
Yeah. And the agreement, like you just mentioned, is one piece. There's two pieces here. And I have seen it a lot as well, where they have the agreement in place, but then they don't have the funding, which is what I want to talk about next. So there's different ways, obviously, that you could attempt to fund a buy-sell agreement. Like, you've decided the terms, you know what's going to happen, but where is this money going to come from when the time comes? So, a couple options you could save for it. Nobody wants to stick cash to the side for something like that. That's not very useful, not good use of our money. They could take on debt, which is risky for the business, and maybe you can't even do it. It might not be achievable at that point in time, depending on where the business is. If you're able to take debt or liquidate assets, you could make installment payments. Like, none of these sound very good, and they're not very secure that they're going to be there when the time comes. So I
was going to say, like, imagine your business partner who's actively involved in the business, helping you grow the business, die suddenly. Well, not only are you going to suffer as a business because that contributor is gone, but now you've got to raise millions of dollars to buy the shares from his spouse.
Yep.
Like, talk about a double whammy. Like, it's already going to affect the business. Now I got to go borrow millions of dollars. Will you be able to get millions of dollars from the bank if they look at it and go, well, this guy was kind of running the business too, and he's not around anymore, and we don't think it's a good risk. So what happens to the business? It could collapse.
Absolutely. So the most efficient and the very best way to do this is with life insurance. Absolutely. This is the way that you're going to do it. So we use life insurance. We can there's actual policies that you can put in place for disability insurance as well. So not just life insurance, but if one of the one of the shareholders was to become disabled, it will give you the cash to be able to buy out the other shareholder as well. So there's that piece. But the life insurance is the one that we definitely talk about more primarily, to have that influx of cash flow come in, to be able to buy out those shares, be able to keep the business going as well. That's another piece of it. But it's tax-free. So it's life insurance is very tax efficient. It's a big bag of tax-free cash that you can now use to be able to fund that agreement. So it's huge. And like you said, it can be very cost effective too. Like, these don't have to be that like high cost for the business. When you're incorporated and you have the policy in your corporation, which you typically do, the business is going to pay for it. We can use, like, we talk about high cash value life insurance a lot, and all the different uses and the great things that come with it. But sometimes if the business, you know that you're only going to have it for 10, 20 years, and then the plan is to sell it, real estate investors, with buildings and things like that, you just get term insurance, like very cheap term insurance for 10, 20 years. That's going to cover that need for you, because, heaven forbid something happens in that short term. Like, I was talking to a developer the other day that is in a real estate investment where there's a number of different shareholders that own it. They have to take out a very big mortgage to finish this development. Well, they're going to finish the build and have it all sold within 15 years. They don't need a permanent solution at that point. They need a 20-year term, just in case, maybe give them a little bit of leeway from the 15 years, right? So term insurance works great for that. Now, on the other hand, though, if this is a business that has been in the family for multiple generations, and we know that it's staying in the family, we're passing it down to the kids, things like that, we do need a permanent solution, right? We know that problem's we're not going to sell the business in 20 years. Well, then we definitely want to look at using high cash value life insurance, because it's got all those other benefits as well as providing that death benefit that we need. So different options depending on the terms that are drawn up in the buy-sell agreement, what makes sense, and the overall outlook of the business. What is that business going to look like 10, 20, 30 and forever down the road in setting that up. And when you have multiple generations in the business, you can really take that planning step ahead and ensure not just the first generation, but the second generation, when they're younger, you can get them involved in the business, get them insured. So you can really develop the plan out long term, not just so you can develop it short term, 10, 20 years, but you can also develop it long-term in legacy and succession planning as well by using the life insurance.
Yeah, I love that. If you have a temporary problem, we're going to be in business for the next 10 or 20 years. You need a temporary solution. Terms works. If you've got a permanent problem, this is a family business. It'll be in the family forever. You've got a permanent problem. You need a permanent solution. Yep. And that's when we talk to the whole life. And I love that too. Like, it's not just when you start talking the whole life, well, now we start talking about maybe a ability to use some of the cash value to buy out the family or allow the family member to retire as the kids take out. And then I love that idea of, well, if we know the next generation is going to be the shareholders long term, let's get the policies on them while they're young, and then we're gonna have much more funding available down the road. Death benefit will grow, cash value will grow. And it can just rinse and repeat. And that's why, we get into the planning element, especially on those larger ones or permanent ones. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about is what type of share redemption or how does it actually work when you die? And the two kind of most common ones, they have something called a cross purchase, and then they have a share redemption. So I'll talk about the cross purchase first. Now, the cross purchase, it's not great. Typically, you're going to use this just if it's a partnership, not for an incorporated company. But we see it all the time for incorporated companies do this. And that would be, if you and I are partners, Christina, I'm going to buy a personal policy on you, and I'm going to pay for that. And you're going to buy a personal policy on me. Now, the reason I say it's not great was now we're using personal dollars. But in the event that you die, I say, well, I don't really want to be partners with your husband, Jordan. Wonderful fella, but maybe not perfectly aligned to run control and compound with me. So I'm going to say, great, I'm going to take the death benefit and I'm going to give that to Jordan in exchange for the shares. And that's the whole purpose of the buy sell. But again, not great tax efficiency. So the second method is the share redemption. And that's typically anytime you have an incorporated business, that's what you want to do. So now the company actually owns the life insurance on each partner. The company pays the premium and the company is the beneficiary. But in the buy-sell agreement, it says in the event of a partner's death, the company is going to receive the money. Say again, just use $1 million, keep it simple. And then the company is going to use that $1 million to buy the shares of the dead partner spouse. So great. You look after the family of your partner that died with a bag of money. You look after the company. Now, all the shares are back with that one surviving partner. That partner's looked after. The family of the deceased members looked after. There's a bag of cash. It was funded probably pretty inexpensively. And now we have a built-in solution for those unexpected events that unfortunately happen all the time. And we see it every day. And we unfortunately are in the business of paying death claims. Well, I say unfortunately, but it's actually fortunate too, because we arrive at the time when they need it the most is when we show up with a big bag of tax-free cash. So really important to get the type of agreement, cross purchase or share redemption in place, and continually update that every few years to make sure the funding is there as the business grows.
Yeah, and you talked about the share redemption and the tax efficiencies a bit, but just wanted to dig into that a bit more. So in having the policy in the corporation, you get to use those corporate dollars to fund it, which is great. But the big thing about life insurance in Canada is that when it pays to the corporation, it pays tax-free and it credits the capital dividend account. So there's a bit of a calculation where it's the death benefit minus the adjusted cost basis is all going to credit the capital dividend account. With term insurance, that's almost immediately the full amount's going to be able to be able to be pulled from the corporation tax-free. When we're dealing with whole life insurance, sometimes it can take a little bit longer, but really minuscule in the big picture. Having that death benefit paid to the corporation tax-free and allowing that shareholder to pull it out tax-free from the corporation is going to be the big tax efficiency there, right? They're able to pull that money out tax-free. Now, sometimes they might need to use it for other things as well, right? It's still going to be able to, like, you might have other things happening in the corporation where you don't need to utilize that capital dividend account, and that shareholder can use it down the road too. So the tax efficiency there is that life insurance brings into the picture when we're looking at the funding for it is huge. So we've got those tax efficiencies. And then one other thing that I just wanted to talk on is the ownership of the policy. So sometimes you've got, holding companies, you've got operating companies, and the holding companies own the shares of the operating company and whatnot when you have different business partners. The operating company is the one that's going to need the cash to be able to pay it out. So the majority of the time, now, if we go into deep planning and it makes sense to move it, but I would say, 95.9% of the time, you're going to want this policy held in the operating company because it's the operating company that you're going to need to be able, they're going to need that cash to be able to pay out those shares and pay out the deceased spouse, right? So that's where you're going to hold it. And sounds a lot different than what we usually say. We always want it the holding company because you need it for life. With this one, it's the operating company that needs the cash.
Yeah, and again, when you have a temporary problem, that term just works great inside the corporation. And again, I know people are listening or watching this and they're saying, yeah, well, I'm healthy. It's not going to happen. Like I have a client that a buy-sell agreement at death happened twice in a 15-year period. So they had a partner killed in a car accident in the 40s, death benefit paid. He bought their surviving spouse out. She was ecstatic because, well, lost her husband, but she didn't want any piece of the business. She wasn't an expert in that business. She got a big bag of cash. Now this guy owned 100% of the business. Fast forward another 10 years and he brought in a few more partners as they grew. And one of those partners ended up dying of illness in his 40s. Another death benefit was paid out. They bought out the surviving spouse. Again, now those surviving shareholders all basically had more shares. So it can happen to people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you name it, it can happen. So if we kind of sum up here, I would say the number one thing is you've got to have a written agreement. Yep. Like the buy-sell is a written agreement, but you've got to have a written agreement. You need it if you're going to have one of those events happen, or even if you're going to someday retire. We don't like that word here, but some people might want to stop working at some point or start working in a different fashion. You need that agreement in place. You have to review it every couple of years. Because again, you look in the last couple of years, what your business has grown to. Well, picture 5-10 years from now. And sometimes you see it where someone gets a buy-sell agreement and it's like, oh, the company's worth like $400,000. And then all of a sudden, 10 years later, it's worth, $10 million.
Yeah.
So you've got to review that every year, make sure the funding agreement makes sense, make sure there's any changes in government legislation or in tax legislation. If there's changes, you need to make sure your agreement's updated. You need to talk to a planner who really understands this. And that's where we come in on the life insurance side. We're part of your team where we meet with your lawyer and the accountant when the buy-sell is set up, and we review the buy-sells. We review them all the time and say, okay, well, this is the best way to fund it, this type of insurance, and this is why. So there's no like, oh yeah, I guess I need insurance. Well, no, you need insurance, but what kind of insurance do you need? What term do you need it for? Or do you need permanent? Where does it need to be held? What is the mechanism in the event of disability? All those things we can talk to your team members about the insurance respect. And because this is what we do every single day at Control and Compound. We protect your business, we grow your business, we protect your partners, we protect your families, we grow it all tax-free. This is what we do. So you want to learn more about a buy-sell agreement. If you're doing a buy-sell agreement, you need some funding, reach out to us. We'd love to help you. That's it for the buy-sell agreement, Christina. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have an awesome day.
Thanks for watching this episode of Control and Compound. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button so you never miss a new episode. And if you're ready to learn more, head to our website, controlandcompound.com. The link's below.